Right now, you might feel just as capable as you did 10 years ago, carrying the groceries in, getting up from a low chair, climbing a flight of stairs. None of it feels particularly different day to day. That's exactly how muscle loss tends to work. It doesn't announce itself with a single dramatic moment. It happens in the background a little at a time, so gradually that most people don't notice until the gap between before and now has quietly become significant. Somewhere between now and later, without any single event marking the change, strength that used to be automatic starts requiring a bit more effort, a bit more thought. By the time it's obvious, a lot has already changed. This isn't a fringe concern. It's one of the most common and most overlooked parts of aging. Researchers call it sarcopenia, the medical term for age-related loss of muscle mass, strength, and physical function. According to a cohort study following nearly 6,000 older adults, sarcopenia affected about 5% of people between 65 and 69, but that number climbed to 36% among people in their late 80s. That's not a small shift. It's a curve that quietly steepens with each passing decade, often without a single moment that feels like a turning point. And this isn't limited to any one country or population. Global reviews estimate that sarcopenia affects somewhere between 10 and 27% of older adults overall, depending on how strictly it's measured, with the number expected to grow simply because the population of older adults worldwide is growing too. Health organizations tracking this trend project a substantial rise in the number of older adults affected over just the next several years, largely because more people are living into the age ranges where sarcopenia becomes common in the first place. According to the National Institutes of Health, sarcopenia is defined by declines in three specific things: muscle strength, muscle quantity or quality, and physical performance. It's not simply about looking less toned. It's about the muscle tissue itself gradually doing less of the work it used to do, and the strength behind everyday movements slowly eroding. Researchers describe the causes as multifactorial, a combination of declining physical activity, changes in hormone levels, low-grade inflammation that increases with age, gradual neurological changes that affect how efficiently muscles are signaled to contract, and nutrition that often falls short of what aging muscle actually needs to maintain itself. Some research has also pointed to fatty tissue building up within the muscle itself over time, which can affect how well that muscle actually functions, even when its overall size looks relatively unchanged. Reduced appetite and slower digestion, both common as people get older, can compound the problem further, since they often mean less protein actually gets absorbed and used by the body even when someone is eating reasonably well on paper. Part of what makes this so easy to overlook is that daily life rarely demands maximum strength. Most tasks, walking to the mailbox, lifting a bag of groceries, standing up from the couch, only require a fraction of what the body is capable of, so a gradual decline in overall capacity can go unnoticed for a long time. The body compensates quietly, adjusting posture, relying more on momentum, favoring one side over the other, right up until a task that used to be routine suddenly feels harder than it should. That moment often gets chalked up to just getting older rather than recognized as a specific, measurable process that's been building for years. It's also worth noting that muscle loss doesn't always show up as visible shrinking. Someone can look largely the same on the outside while strength and function decline underneath, which is part of why it's so often missed until a fall, an illness, or a hospital stay brings it into focus all at once. Here's why this matters beyond appearance or general fitness. Research published through the National Institutes of Health notes that sarcopenia is strongly associated with a higher incidence of falls and increased fracture risk. For adults over 90 specifically, reduced muscle mass and function is considered a real risk factor for loss of independence. Muscle strength and quantity have also been shown to predict outcomes after major surgery, including recovery time and complication rates, which suggests muscle health may function as a broader marker of how well the body handles physical stress, not just a fitness metric on its own. None of this means muscle loss guarantees a fall or a loss of independence. It doesn't, and plenty of people maintain strength well into their later years. But it does mean that quiet, gradual muscle loss is connected to some of the outcomes older adults worry about most, which is exactly why it deserves more attention than it usually gets. Think about what before typically looks like. Getting out of a car without needing to brace against the door. Carrying both a grocery bag and a set of keys at once without thinking about it. Standing up from a low seat in one smooth motion. Opening a stubborn jar lid without a second thought. These are the kinds of small, automatic movements that quietly rely on muscle strength most people never consciously think about until after arrives, and one of those movements suddenly requires a pause, a second hand, or a moment of extra effort. That shift, small as it seems, is often the first visible sign of something that's been developing for years beneath the surface. The encouraging part of this research is that sarcopenia isn't treated as an inevitable, unstoppable decline. Reviews published through the National Institutes of Health point to two consistent factors that help protect against it: adequate protein intake and regular exercise, particularly resistance or strength-based movement. Clinical research, specifically comparing intervention approaches, has found that structured strength training tends to produce meaningful improvements in muscle strength and function for older adults, and combining it with attention to protein intake appears to support results even further. Researchers are still refining exactly which type and intensity of exercise works best for different people, but the overall direction of the evidence has stayed fairly consistent for years now. None of this means a single workout or one high-protein meal reverses years of gradual change. But it does mean the trajectory isn't fixed, and consistent effort over time genuinely appears to matter. Nutrition research on this topic tends to circle back to one recurring theme. Many older adults simply aren't taking in enough protein overall to support the muscle they still have, let alone rebuild what's been lost. This isn't usually about a lack of willingness. Appetite naturally decreases for a lot of people as they get older, and digestion becomes less efficient at extracting and using nutrients from food, meaning a meal that would have been plenty a decade ago may quietly fall short of what aging muscle actually needs now. Researchers have also looked at whether spreading protein more evenly across meals, rather than concentrating most of it at dinner, makes a meaningful difference. And here the evidence is genuinely mixed. Some studies have linked a more even distribution to better muscle function, while others have found that total daily protein intake matters far more than how it's spread across the day. What most researchers agree on, at least, is that getting enough protein overall is the part worth prioritizing first. So what do you actually do with all of this? If any of this sounds like where you are right now, the most useful next step isn't necessarily buying new equipment or overhauling your entire routine overnight. It's worth having a specific conversation with your doctor or a physical therapist about your current strength, and any changes you've noticed. A professional assessment can identify where you actually stand rather than guessing. Some clinics can measure grip strength or walking speed in just a few minutes, which gives a much clearer picture than simply asking, "Do I feel weaker lately?" From there, many people find that starting with simple resistance movements, guided by a professional familiar with their health history, is more sustainable than an aggressive program taken on alone. It's also worth mentioning any new fatigue, weakness, or balance changes at your next appointment, since these details help your doctor build a fuller picture of what's going on and whether anything beyond normal aging might be contributing. Everything shared here is general information, not personal medical advice. If any part of this feels relevant to you or someone you care about, your doctor or a physical therapist is the right person to work through it with, since they can assess your specific situation, including any other health conditions or medications that might factor in a way this video simply can't. Think of this as a starting point for that conversation, not a replacement for it. Most people don't lose their strength all at once. They lose it one skipped walk, one missed protein-rich meal, one "I'll start next week" at a time, and they get it back the same slow way, if they choose to. Drop a comment below. Have you noticed any small everyday task getting a little harder over the past few years? The kind of thing you might have brushed off before today? And if you've already started strength training later in life, we'd love to hear how it's gone for you. If you're curious which everyday habit might be quietly working against your muscle strength without you realizing it, that conversation is coming soon. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.